You're listening to Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill Gaming Podcast. Here's your host, John Wall.
It's September 4th, 2025, and welcome to episode 148 of Midlife Side Quest, the Over the Hill video game podcast. My name is John Wall, and every Thursday morning I bring you my video game impressions, the latest industry news, and tales of a Gen X geek, delivered to you in just 15 minutes. Thank you for tuning into the show today. I am very excited. Fall is here. It's chilly outside. School is back in session, and spooky season is just around the corner. Ha ha ha. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the game Mafia, the Old Country. But as always, we start the show by checking out some of the gaming news from the past week. And after more than 20 years and countless games, one of the most popular series of all time is finally set to make the move to the big screen. Variety reports that Paramount has struck a deal with Microsoft and Activision to bring a Call of Duty film to theaters. The specifics of the deal weren't disclosed, but it speaks about the focus on a single blockbuster film with the possibility of future sequels and maybe even a TV series if it does well. For their part, Activision president Rob Kostich said, quote, "With Paramount, we have found a fantastic partner who we will work with to take that visceral, breathtaking action to the big screen in a defining cinematic moment. The film will honor and expand upon what has made this franchise great in the first place, and we cannot wait to get started." So, I mean, Call of Duty is still to this day massive, huge. It has sold over 500 million games, grossed over $30 billion. So it seemed inevitable that they would try and, make even more money with a film. And as far as what that film could look like, I feel like adapting the Modern Warfare series would be kind of a no-brainer. You've got iconic characters like Price and Ghost who could headline that movie. And to direct, I don't think anybody does ridiculous, bombastic action like Michael Bay. And, while I don't necessarily love the Transformers films, looking back at some of his earlier movies like The Rock and Bad Boys shows that, he does have a knack for that kind of crazy, over-the-top action mixed with fun characters that I think would really serve this movie well. All right, kids, gather round. Once upon a time, the video game landscape was very different. Video games didn't have battle passes or subscriptions. You didn't play them for years and years as new updates and expansions changed the game over time. And every game didn't take place in a huge, massive open world full of dozens of side quests and ask you to unlock endless abilities in a sprawling skill tree. It was a simpler time in a lot of ways. You could play a game, finish it in like 10 or 20 hours, get a cool story, and then just be done with it. Crazy, right? Now, I'm not saying that all those modern systems and way of doing things are inherently bad, but I do have a sort of nostalgia for the more streamlined narrative experience that games like Mafia, the Old Country bring to the table. And not only did developer Hangar 13 do a great job of revisiting that sort of old-fashioned style of game design, but they really brought their A-game for the game's presentation and storytelling, creating what I think is the best Mafia game to date, and what I think is a shoo-in for my top 10 list come the end of the year. So the game tells the story of Enzo Favara, a young man who at the start of the game is working in the sulfur mines in Sicily after being sold into labor by his father to pay off his debts. Dad of the year. The mines are run by a local crime boss, Don Spadaro, and after an accident leaves many people in the crew dead or injured, Enzo goes on the run and ends up being chased onto the property of Don Teresi, head of the Teresi crime family. Teresi protects Enzo from his pursuers more as a way to show strength against Spadaro as opposed to, just out of the kindness of his heart. He is a mob boss after all. And he ends up staying at the villa doing odd jobs like, delivering crates of wine and shoveling horse crap. As far as Mafia stories go, it's mostly coloring within the lines, checking all the boxes that you would expect. Enzo's tasks, getting increasingly shady, check. He's making googly eyes with the Don's daughter, check. It's all pretty predictable, but, there were a few moments that kept me on my toes. And I really don't mind a story being fairly formulaic if you tell it well. And I think that they tell this story pretty damn well. A big part of what works for me were the characters. I think all of the actors involved really delivered memorable performances, and also, if you want, you can even select Sicilian dialogue with English subtitles to get that truly immersive feel. And even though most of the characters, are fitting into very familiar archetypes, I think the writing is very solid, and combined with the voice work, it creates a cast of very memorable characters. In particular, I thought that Johnny Santiago as Don Teresi created a character who is equal parts the father figure that Enzo never had, but also a terrifying presence who seems like he could lash out at any moment and break Enzo in half. Also, Alberto Freza is great as Luca, a higher-ranking member of the family who is struggling to balance his loyalty to the Don and to the family with his desire to, have a family of his own. He was a personal favorite of mine. Great character. It also looks and sounds great. The score delivers that perfect, Mafia vibe, and the game can also be quite stunning to look at times. It's maybe not the most technically amazing, jaw-dropping game, but they do a lot with the tools that they have. They use the lighting and the world design and great cinematography in the cutscenes. The whole thing felt very, cinematic, I guess. And with the tight pacing and kind of the chapters between storytelling, it really kind of felt like I was watching a season of a really good prestige TV show. One of those like one season shows that'll pop up on HBO every now and again, and you go, that was a really good, well done, self-contained story. And that's not to downplay the gameplay, because even though it has a very old school feel to it, I still had a good amount of fun playing it. It plays pretty similar to other action shooters from, 10, 15 years ago. When a fight pops off, you're ducking behind cover, shooting enemies, running to another cover, picking up ammo and bandages. You've done this a million times in a million other games, and Mafia doesn't really do anything to try and, change things up or innovate, but it still feels fun and responsive. They do have these sort of like boss fights where you'll go up against a significant opponent in a knife fight, where you got to dodge and parry and slash at your enemy. It's a nice little change from the shootouts. I do wish there was a better option for melee combat. When an enemy gets real close, I just kind of had to shoot wildly while trying to get some distance between us. So that bit was a little bit sloppy. There's also a decent amount of stealth in the game, and that felt pretty good too. The enemies aren't, they're not so dumb that you can just walk right in front of them and they won't notice, but they're also, not rocket scientists who are going to hunt you down wherever you go. It's that nice, in the middle spot. You got to be careful and quiet, but it's still, a little forgiving. The few knocks I have against the game, probably would be that they introduce a good amount of collectibles to find, but given that they really kind of are constantly pushing you from one mission objective and location to the next, there's not really much opportunity or incentive to like stop what you're doing and go explore and try and find all those things. And I don't even really know what the benefit is to getting it all. I think you can unlock, haircuts or something. Also, the endings are hard. The ending drags on a bit too long, and they totally jump the shark. It gets way more action set piece than they really needed to do for a story like this. It didn't, sour the whole experience for me, but it felt super unnecessary, and I wish more games had the confidence to end in a more restrained way. I really had a great time though with Mafia: The Old Country. The story and the characters were all very well done and memorable. The gameplay, it was focused and fun, and it told the story that it wanted to tell in, like about 15 hours, and then it was done. No need to jump into a new game plus and spend 50 hours exploring and unlocking all the secrets. Just be done. That was kind of refreshing. So this week I revisited Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 on the Series X for the first time since shortly after launch. You might remember that the game had a bit of a bumpy launch with poor performance on the console side of things. Well, about 10 months after launch, I can say that the game has gone from rough around the edges to straight up unplayable. I don't know how you make a game so much worse after almost a year after launch, but they've managed it. It went from running, so with scattered moments of freezing up to being just totally locked up with a few moments of the game actually running scattered throughout. Seriously, if they haven't offered refunds for the console version of this game, they absolutely need to. It's abysmal. Avoid it. At the core of the problem, is their decision to have this new version of the game stream almost all of the assets from the cloud. That seems nice on paper. It reduced the size of the download by about 100 gigs, but their infrastructure is just not capable of handling that amount of data. And I have, fiber gig internet. So if my setup can't run it, I don't imagine many people's can. It was just a flat out bad call. So what I actually ended up doing was uninstalling the game and re-downloading the 2020 version, and the difference was stunning. The game loaded fast, it ran silky smooth, textures and details on the ground actually loaded, so I wasn't staring at some, blurry Nintendo 64 looking landscape. It doesn't have all those improvements that they hyped up, like the careers and such that were in the sequel, but it's still a fantastic game, and it actually works. So if you're looking to get back into Flight Sim, skip 2024 and just go with 2020. Lastly, this week, I just want to quickly thank some of the people who helped out with that recent promo spot for the podcast that I posted online. Adam Gumbert, Ben Bertoli, Chris Berto, Jeff Kanata, Jesse Norris, Matt Knight, Michael Pachter, Todd Oxtra, and Victor Lucas. It's a super silly video, but it was fun to make. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out on any of the show's social channels or the YouTube channel. And thank you to everybody for the help. And thank you so much for listening to Midlife Side Quest. I really appreciate you making time in your day to hang out with me. You can catch a new episode of the show every Thursday wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can support the show by subscribing and leaving a review. Until next time, be well and happy gaming.